Hello, good evening, and thank you all for joining. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started now. Thank you all for joining. Just in case you missed that video that we just played, it was Yellow Pain. It's a very, very good video on the importance of voting. So if you missed it, check it out on YouTube. My name is Lakissa Bright, and I am the president of Ladders for Leaders. There are three of us, three organizations that are co-hosting this event this evening. It's Ladders for Leaders, Move Texas, and the Links organization. Just in case you're not sure what Ladders for Leaders is, we are a nonprofit organization that helps high school students get internship opportunities. So if you are a high school student who's interested in internship opportunities, or if you know a friend or a family member that might benefit from that, definitely look us up on Google, just Ladders for Leaders Texas, and you should be able to find us. So thanks again for joining us tonight. We're very excited about this session, excited about the action that's going to happen as a result of the session. And with that, I will turn it over to Vanessa Henry.
Hey everyone, good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to see all of you who are in attendance. And I just want to do a quick few reminders before we get started. First of all, we're here to have fun. We're here to learn, to share some information with you. So we encourage participation. We're going to do some activities throughout the night. There will be prizes. So I encourage you to participate as we go through different parts of the evening. If you don't mind, I'm asking that you keep your phones on mute unless you are speaking or responding to a question. That way we don't have any background noise. If you'd like, share your video. So you see our faces, we'd love to see your faces so that we can have a good time tonight. And then we will be using the chat. We want to try to keep the chat open for questions that you have for the presenters. So feel free to drop in a line in the chat if you have a question about anything that's going on tonight.
Hi, y'all. I'm Fernanda, and I'm here to talk to you guys about voter registration. I am a Austin field organizer for Move Texas. I have been in this role since 2018 because when I was a senior in college, I became absolutely obsessed with voter registration. I come from a big immigrant community, so nobody really, broke down the high school voter registration process or how to become civically engaged in my community. So that's what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do here for you all today. But before I tell you all a little bit more about us, I wanted to hear from you all. First, what does civic engagement mean to you guys? What does being civically engaged mean to you? What comes to mind when you hear the term civic engagement? What we're gonna do here is drop a link in the chat so that you can Jamboard it. And I'm gonna show you guys exactly how we do that Jamboard. So you're gonna go into the link, open it up, and it should open a page that looks just like this. You're gonna go into the sticky note portion of it right here, and then you're gonna tell me, what does civic engagement mean to you? I'll show mine, caring about other people. And then you'll just save it and put it in. So I want y'all to go ahead and tell me, what does civic engagement mean to you? Being active in your community, absolutely. Being involved in your community, for sure. Very community-centric. I'll give you all another minute to drop those in. Engagement is participating in the process of making the lives of people in your community better, 100%. Making a difference in the community, for sure. Making an impact. Using your voice to advocate for your community and spread awareness. These are beautiful answers, y'all. Absolutely. So you guys can keep leaving your notes there. I would love to be able to go back and see them because it makes me so happy and it warms my heart to see what civic engagement, how much civic engagement means to young people. But while we do that, I'll go back and I'll tell you guys a little bit about what civic engagement means to us at Move Texas. Oh, there's my GIF. I did not let it load. So Move Texas, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit grassroots organization, and our job here is to make politics more accessible and more representative for young people all across Texas. We do that through voter registration, civic engagement, leadership development, and issue advocacy. And I want to break some of these little things down for you all just briefly so that we can talk about why these tenets are so important to us. We're a nonpartisan organization because we don't care about the drama of political parties. We are here because we care about the issues. We're here because we want to inform you guys about the process, and we're not trying to make a profit from it. We just fundamentally believe that by empowering you guys as young people to have your voices heard, we can truly make that lasting social and political change happen. We are for young people by young people because we understand the power of students, because we're proof of that. Our organization started out as a group of tiny little college friends who were always talking about politics and then decided to put their money where their mouth is. So they wanted their friends and their campus to participate in local elections. They registered over 1,000 students in 60 days and just completely changed the trajectory of their district and the outcome of the election. As a matter of fact, it was that election where they were able to successfully win an ordinance to be able to put body cams on police officers. And in that same spirit, we've become one of the most effective youth voter registration organizations in the state. We are entirely run by young people, which means that we recognize that we're all in this together. We're all learning together. But there's also a lot of innovation in our youth-centered work because we do it with you all in mind. We also know that young people aren't just the future. We're here right now. And I'm going to be blunt with you guys. Most candidates don't really make an investment in the youth vote. We do, because we know that Texas wasn't a battleground state, meaning a state where both political parties have an equal amount of supporters, until young people showed up and made it one. And we also know that young people and people of color have been the primary targets of voter suppression, and that's something we just can't stand for. So we believe that the strongest advocates for the issues that matter to us are the young, everyday people that are ready for this big change. So it's super important for us to give you all the tools that you need to help your community improve. And with that said, I do want to ask you guys another question, and we'll be dropping in the link in the Jamboard as well. So we know that young people are issue-first voters and that the issues that you care about matter. So I want to know, what issues are important to you? What's something important to you? What's something you would like to change if you had the power to change it? Another way to phrase the question. So let's Jamboard it. Black Lives Matter, absolutely. Women's health rights. Equal pay for women, yes. Getting rid of the Electoral College, absolutely. It's so anti-democratic. Sustainable energy, yes. Health and safety, absolutely. I'll give you all another minute to drop those in, and please keep dropping those in even after I leave the Jamboard. I want to hear what's important to you all. Student loan debt, oh my God, that one hits me hard. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you all so much. So I'll go back over here. Racial injustice, women's healthcare, Medicare for all, student loans. Yes, I hear you all. All of these things are so, and police reform, yes. Oh my God, housing. That's especially a big one in Austin. Okay, before I get excited, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how these decisions get made. Why do we have to live with the things we have to live with? That's because there's people in office who get to decide what to do about it. Maybe we've wondered, why do these issues persist in our communities and who is responsible for it? Maybe like Stan from South Park, we've wondered, well, who exactly is in charge here? So before that, I wanted to pose a question to you all. Please raise your hand using the Zoom link hand feature, and we'll call on you guys for the potential chance to win a prize, maybe, I don't know. So what are some responsibilities of the president?
I think the president is supposed to unite the country, unite both sides, unite like all the citizens together rather than like separating.
Right, yeah, provide unity, right? Unity for the country. He's supposed to be the country's leader. Good answer. So I want to tell you guys, there's a lot of focus on the president and on the national election and all that. So I want to tell you guys a little bit more about state and local level stuff before anything. And I want to tell you guys how the issues you care about are tied to various levels of the government. So if you
Before you start, Fernanda, can I say that because you were the first to answer, goodness, we have a gift card for you, $20 Amazon gift card.
Oh, thank you. That's so cool.
Thank you so much. You've probably been hearing a lot of calls about defunding the police, reimagining public safety in America. Oh, am I going mute? Can you guys still hear me? Perfect. You've been hearing a lot of calls about defunding the police, reimagining public safety in America as we know it. So how does this play out on a political scale? I want to use Austin as an example here because it's right in our backyard. After months of daily protesting, grassroots leaders and the people of Austin were finally able to successfully pressure the city council to allocate $150 million from the Austin Police Department's budget to be distributed to other public goods like public health, EMTs, parks, public goods that actually benefit our community, right? And this didn't just happen because our city council members woke up one day and decided they were going to change stuff. This happened because hundreds and hundreds upon people were flooding their city council meetings, advocating for this to happen, calling and emailing their representatives like crazy. I mean, I went to these city council meetings. This was while the budget was being decided at the beginning of August. You had people signing up in the 300s to speak at these city council meetings. It was a sight to behold. These meetings were starting for 8 a.m. and ending till like 12 midnight. And this was a win. This was a win for activists, not just activists, but the community. So with that said, second pop quiz question. What is a responsibility of a city council member? Same thing, raise your hand through Zoom. I'll give it 30 seconds, and if not, I'll move on. If not, no worries, it's cool. It's cool, we'll have these questions scattered throughout the presentation anyway, so no pressure. Anyways, another focus thing I wanted to talk about was the environment. Especially because there is a public office that we don't really talk about. And I wanted to tell you guys about it because I want to tell you guys who the most powerful person is when it comes to that issue of the environment at the state level. In fact, probably not just the state level, but the Railroad Commissioner of Texas, which is a state entity, might be one of the most powerful government agencies that you've probably never heard of. And that's because despite the name, what the Railroad Commissioner does is regulate the Texas oil and gas industries. So those gas pipelines that are always breaking and polluting our waters, that's something that they're in charge of doing. This is decided by your Railroad Commissioner, and this is an election that's up right now in 2020. So make sure y'all pay attention to that one. And then at the local level, the way this issue is reflected is through public transportation, which one of the best ways to help the environment is by cutting those CO2 emissions from vehicles, which means increasing public transportation. These are things that get decided at the local level. For instance, right now in Austin, we have this $8 billion ballot initiative called Project Connect, which is up for election this November, and it's to create a shuttle system in Austin that connects the entire city to reduce those CO2 emissions, that traffic, and actually help people get from one place to another. So all of this to say that these issues don't happen in a vacuum, right? There are people who are in charge of making these decisions that impact your everyday life. And with the emphasis that the folks at the state and local level have so much more sway in dictating the contours of your life, how your schools are funded, how your communities are funded, how your neighborhoods look. Like these are all things that get decided at the local level. And often at the local level, you have less participation. So last question for this section, last pop quiz question. What is something that all these politicians have in common? Let's give it like a 30-second thing. If anyone wants to be brave and give it a shot.
Do they have to take an oath of some sort?
Close, close. So the answer I was looking for is they have to get elected. They all have to get elected. These officials, these politicians, they are not all powerful beings. And the reason that they have power is because you as a voter gave them power. Elected officials have a responsibility to the people that gave them the power to be accountable to them. They get paid with taxpayer bucks to serve the communities that they represent. And through voting, we are giving power to the issues that are important to us at a national, state, and more importantly, local level. And I say more importantly because, like I said, these local elections, there's so much sway in your life. And in some cases, they get decided by like 10, 20 votes. It's crazy. Like, you can make a change in your local elections if you just take you and like 10 friends to vote with you. So you want to see the power of your vote in action? Participate in a local election, especially one of those constitutional amendment elections that have like only 5% of registered voters participating in it. And it literally just means amending our Texas Constitution, which also, by the way, this provides my perfect segue into what I came to talk to you all about, which is voter registration. The first step towards building power for the issues that we care about is voter registration. And I'm gonna level with you guys. The state of Texas does not make it easy to register to vote. And I have a theory that it's because they don't want you guys to vote. Actually, that's probably not a theory. That's probably like very true. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about why we vote. So one of the main reasons that we vote is to build power. That's something you've probably heard me repeating a lot because it's something I truly believe. When we vote, we build power for the issues we care about. By voting for the candidate who has the best plan in relation to the issues that are important to me, we build power behind those issues. The biggest difference between us also and our grandparents is that they vote in local and state in like these tiny little elections that you may have never heard of. Why? Not necessarily because they care more, it's because they're habitual voters. Voting is a habit. Voting is a muscle that we have to exercise to strengthen. So our work isn't just about getting you guys to vote for in one election or for one candidate. It's about empowering young people to exercise their right to vote and fundamentally change the electorate to build long-term power. Because by becoming an active coalition of voters, we are coming together to build that power that I'm talking about. One vote alone can't create change, but many votes coming together time after time is how you redefine your representatives' priorities and force them to listen to you. Which brings me to my next pop quiz question. Who is the largest voting demographic? Just raise your hand. I see Nika raised her hand.
Isn't it like the 50 to 65-year-old range, like the older generations that are voting more?
It's actually not, but you actually answered the question exactly how I wanted you to. It's you guys. This past 2019, 18 to 29-year-olds surpassed baby boomers as the largest voting coalition in the United States. So we know young people want to vote. They just often face barriers that aren't addressed, like lack of.
Can I say one thing? Since Nika did speak up and answer the question, we have another gift card for her, $20 gift card.
Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Anika, for putting yourself out there. So we know that young people want to vote, right? They just have different barriers, like lack of access to polling locations, a voter registration process that is quite frankly super confusing. Like, I didn't understand it till like 2 years ago as a 23-year-old. And despite the necessary investments not being made in youth communities, millions of young voters have registered to vote since 2016 and are mobilizing like never before. Young voters outnumber older voting blocks, but there is this misconception that young people don't care about politics. Where does that come from? Well, for starters, civics hasn't been quite taught at the same level as it was when our grandparents were going through the public education system, right? After we gave 18-year-olds the right to vote after the Vietnam War, civic education had been publicly, systematically defunded at the education level. so that so if you guys don't understand what's happening, you guys don't understand like how to vote or how our government works or anything, that's not your fault. That's by design. Also, there's a fact that 60% of young voters have reported never being contacted by a campaign before, and that was this past primary election. 60% of young people have never been contacted by a campaign before. Why? Also, student IDs not being able to be a valid form of ID. We know the strict voter ID laws don't just close the doors for young voters, but for a lot of voters of color as well. Like I said, Texas wasn't a battleground state until young people showed up in massive droves and made it one. In Texas, more than 40% of us are under the age of 30 and 63% are people of color. Our state is getting younger and more diverse every day. By the year 2022, 1 in 3 Texans will be under the age of 30. And out of those under the age of 30, 2 in 3 will be young people of color. 1 million voters, like I said, under the age of 25 have registered to vote since the 2016 presidential election. So youth momentum is building and change is inevitable. It's not a matter of you getting on board, it's just a matter of when you're gonna get on board. So with that said, how is that change coming? Because we are going to make a pledge today that we are going to vote in at least 3 consecutive elections, because we know that when you participate in at least 3 elections, you're more likely to become a lifelong voter. So what is this pledge to vote card? This pledge to vote card is to keep you all up to date on your national, state, and local elections. We notify you when early voting begins, when election is coming up. And one of my favorite things about this is that it's not just like these robo-texts or these robocalls. It's real people reaching out to you, contacting you, reminding you about these things. So if you have any questions about voting, you encounter difficulties at the polls, anything like that, we're here to help you all out. We also have some volunteer join the team opportunities for people that are looking for opportunities to help engage and mobilize young voters, or maybe just learn a little bit more about what it is that we do here. So I believe this, yes, thank you so much, Vanessa. That link has been dropped in the chat. So I'll give y'all like about few seconds to, make your pledge to vote. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to actually register to vote in Texas, right? So there are basically 2 ways. You can either do a mail-in form, which means you have to either print out or find a voter registration mail-in form, fill it out, and then put it in the mail and hope for the best. Not hope for the best, but hope that it makes it to your county's election department in time to get registered to vote for this upcoming election. Or you can just vote in person, right? You can register to vote in person, either by going to your county's election department or by registering with a volunteer deputy registrar. I will say this is the best way to register to vote because it means that someone is actually going to be able to take your form to the elections department, check over your form, make sure that it doesn't get rejected, make sure that everything looks good so that you can in fact get registered to vote. But where can we find a volunteer deputy registrar? Well, I'll tell you where. Drive-through voter registration. And I'll let Vanessa or Lakissa chime in and tell you all a little bit about this.
Sure, yes, we are having a drive-through voter registration here in Williamson County. This coming up Sunday, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock at Old Settlers Park. It's going to be at the RAB Pavilion in that park. So if you are not registered to vote and you need to get registered, come out to that park on Sunday from 1 to 3 and we will be happy to get you registered. If you're on the line close to Williamson County, there's also the same event happening at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church on the east side this coming up Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So those are 2 opportunities for local individuals. If you are out of state, I'll just ask you to stay on the line after the meeting's over and we will figure out how to get you registered.
Awesome. Well, now I'm going to go over some voter registration FYIs that I think we should know. So in the US, you do have to be 18 years old and a US citizen to be able to register to vote. In order to be able to vote in an election, you have to be registered 30 days before the election to be able to participate in that specific election. So the deadline to vote for this upcoming November election is going to be October 5th. You have to register to vote where you're currently living for a couple of reasons. One, it impacts your representation. So even if you move within the same city, that can mean you have a new city council member, a new precinct, a new county commissioner, a number of local offices that could be changing for you all. And like we said, local politics are the ones that are going to be impacting you the most. This is your community. This is the space that you live in. Also, polling locations. You want to be registered to vote wherever you are. That way you can have access to your nearest polling location. And also, you want to be registered to vote where you currently live to prevent you from being held in suspense. So I'm going to go into that. Your voter registration automatically renews itself every 2 years. So if you register to vote, you only have to do it once unless you change your address or change your name. So if your voter registration gets sent to the wrong address whenever it renews itself, that could mean that your voter registration could be held in suspense. And basically what that means is having extra barriers on top of the barriers that you already have to face whenever it is you go vote. So by extra barriers, I mean you have to show an extra ID on top of the ID you already have to show. I know for me, I only have one of those IDs. I don't know what I would do if I would have to show 2 of those. That's just an example. Also, your voter registration can lapse and be put in suspense if you don't participate in a few major elections or if you skip out on a couple of elections. Personally, I don't know why. I think it's just because Texas loves to just purge voter rolls every so often. So there you go. And secondly, formerly incarcerated folks who are off paper are eligible to also register to vote. So one thing I want to say, for some, it may take a few tries to get registered to vote. So make sure you get it done as soon as you possibly can. And now I just want to go over I'll give you a little preview of what you're going to see whenever it is you do come to the voter registration drive, and cover some sections of the form that generally, have some mistakes. Been registered in that county, you are a new applicant. Do not miss the citizenship and age verification boxes. These little boxes, everyone misses them. If you miss this, then that means you're not going to get registered to vote. Print your name exactly as it appears on your valid ID. That is the only thing that has to match your ID. Your address does not have to match the address on your ID does not have to match the address that you want to get registered to vote in. It does not have to match. The only thing that has to match is your name. Always register to vote at your current address. Don't forget to include apartment, dorm number, or unit numbers. And then I'll just go over number 9. This section, so that you guys can be prepared for the voter registration drive, you're either going to have to know either the last 4 digits of your social security or your Texas driver's license number or Texas personal ID number. That one is either or, not both. So make sure you come prepared with at least one of these forms of ID. Not forms of ID, you don't have to show it, you just have to know it, and make sure you put it on the form. And make sure you sign and date it, otherwise it doesn't count. So with that, I'm just going to go over what are some ways that we can actually vote. So you can either vote by mail or absentee voting. There are some restrictions in Texas over who gets to vote by mail: 65 years or older, disabled, out of the county on election day, or during the period of early voting, or be confined in jail but otherwise eligible to vote. Early voting is going to be the best time for you guys to actually vote, because it's this election season especially, we got an extra week of early voting. This is going to be, and this is exactly so that we can slow the spread of COVID, and to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be able to vote, but not like in a crowded room or anything like that. So definitely take advantage of that early voting period. And like I said, it's going to be from October 13th through the 30th. And then election day is going to be your last chance to vote. And also a pop quiz question. Can somebody, raising your hand, tell me, when is election day this year?
Kayla is raising her hand.
Kayla.
November 3rd.
Yeah.
Very good.
Got it. That's right.
And
November 3rd.
because of that, we have a $20 Amazon gift card.
Woo! Go Kayla.
Thank you.
Awesome. So all you need to take with you to the polls if you're going to go vote in person is a valid form of ID. You don't need anything else. We do recommend you take your voter registration card with you if you have it. That's because that is your final definitive proof that you are in fact registered to vote. That means nobody's going to turn you away from the polls whatsoever if you take that voter registration card with you. But if you don't have it, don't let it prevent you from voting, because you don't need it to vote. All you need is a valid form of ID. Then I will also recommend, well, maybe I don't know who I'm voting for. I don't know where to find that. I don't know any of that. Look up your sample ballot. Your sample ballot is basically the ballot that you're going to be seeing whenever it is you do go vote. So you can actually print it out, fill it out beforehand, and take it with you to the polls. And that way, you know, you don't have to be thinking about like, who am I going to vote? And also, so you are not able to take your phone in with you to the polling booth. So if you bring your sample ballot, make sure you like write down your notes, print it out, all that stuff. But before I get into the weeds with that, I do want to show you guys a video on what to expect at the polls. How are these voting machines working? We got some new fancy voting machines in the last couple years. And I want to show you guys how they work because they're actually pretty cool. It says Travis County here, but I promise you, Williamson, if you are in Williamson County, if you are in Travis County, this voting machine applies to you. So let's check it out.
Be sure to have your photo ID ready when you check in. Once the poll worker finds you on the list of registered voters, they will flip over the tablet, asking you to confirm your information and sign the screen. You will then be handed a ballot card. Now, you're ready to vote. Take your ballot card to an available voting booth and insert it into the slot of the new touchscreen ballot marking device in the voting booth. Make your selections on the touchscreen. You can easily review your choices as you go and on the final screen of the ballot marking device. Make changes by touching the options labeled Next and Previous. The voting system is fully accessible. Any voter can use it. Each booth includes an audio ballot and keypad. It's designed for everyone. Once you've made your selections on the touchscreen, print your voted ballot card by tapping the Print Card option. Your printed ballot card will be returned to you from the same slot on the front of the ballot marking device. As a Travis County voter, you'll have a new job when you go to vote, verifying your selections on the ballot card. Step away from the voting booth with your ballot card and review your selections. If you want to change the selection you made, simply bring the ballot card back to the check-in table. A poll worker will spoil that ballot card and give you a new one to start over. Once you're satisfied with your selections, take your ballot card to the digital scanner at the ballot box. The display screen at the ballot box will provide instructions on how to insert your ballot into the scanner. Once inserted, the display screen will notify you that your ballot has been successfully cast. Finally, don't forget your I voted sticker.
Great. So that's just a little preview of what you all can expect at the polls. And that leads me to our next portion, our last final portion, which is just some pro tips from a voting professional. So please make sure you have your valid form of ID with you, and if possible, your voter registration card whenever it is you take to the polls. Don't wear any political clothing to the polls. We have laws against electioneering. If you like any type of political clothing, like if you wear like a candidate or something that says Democrat or Republican, they are not going to let you vote with it. So make sure you don't take any political clothing to the polls with you. Bring your notes on a piece of paper. If the polls close at 7 and you get in line at 7, they are legally required to let you vote. During early voting, you can vote at any polling location. The address on your ID does not have to match your voter registration. If you move to a new county and you didn't update your voter registration in time, you can request what's called a limited ballot. If you don't have a valid form of ID, you can actually instead sign what's called a reasonable impediment declaration, and you can actually vote with a bank statement, a check, or a birth certificate, pretty much anything that has your name and your address. So that's like a utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, even your voter registration card itself, which will have the address on it, would be a form of ID that you can use. If you are eligible, you should never be turned away from voting. You should never, ever, if you are a registered voter, you should never be turned away from the polls. Worst comes to worst, you can request what's called a provisional ballot. And for those resources, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit more about the civic engagement guide that I made for you guys, bit.ly/GenZVotes. Just going to click on it real quick to give you a preview of what you can find in there. If you want to take this information with you, learn more, share it with your friends, you can go ahead, access our civic engagement guide. What do I need to vote? What's a provisional ballot? How can I find a sample ballot? All of that stuff we cover in this youth civic engagement guide. One last thing, do want to talk about becoming a poll worker for your consideration. In 2018, 6 out of 10 poll workers were 61 and above. And since we are in the middle of a pandemic, older generations, which are the most vulnerable, they need us young people to step up to protect them and protect our democracy. Poll workers must be a minimum of age of 16 years old to be student election workers. In that role, you would have to be enrolled in a school and have a minimum GPA of at least 3.0. If you want to read more about it, like I said, please access our Wilco bit.ly/WilcoVotes. And with that, I will hand it back over to, oh, that's true. I had one more pop quiz question to ask you guys. So, what do you need to bring to the polls? Anyone?
We were looking for a hand.
Anyone know what you need to take with you to the polls?
Goodness is raising her hand.
A form of ID.
There you go, a valid form of ID. And I have another question for you all as well.
I saw another hand, but it went away.
That's okay, let's see it. Hopefully, when is the best time to vote? You can tell me, when is the best?
Nyla's raising her hand.
Is it the best time to vote early?
Yes, early voting. That is the best time to vote. Awesome.
Good answers.
Great answers. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll hand it back over to you all to finish us off.
You want to go to the next slide, Fernanda?
Right. Oh my God. Please. Questions. Any questions? Any and all voting, civic engagement related questions, please send them my way.
The chat is open, guys, if you want to pop your question in there and I can read them aloud.
It was Nyla. I think her hand was just up from answering the question. While we're waiting for questions, there were a few students who registered, and you noted on your registration that you weren't sure if you were registered to vote or not. I sent you an email with a link to check your registration. So take a look at that, and you should be able to confirm through that link, but you can also stay on once we end the call, and we'll be happy to look it up for you. Are there any questions?
We have a question. What should you do if you encounter a problem with being allowed to vote?
Vote for, okay, yes, I actually have the answer for that. We are best friends with the Texas Civil Rights Project, and they actually have a wonderful election protection hotline that you can call. And I'm going to throw the number down here. And the election protection hotline number, by the way, you can find on the Youth Civic Engagement Guide that I sent you all as well. But 866-OUR-VOTE. You encounter any problems at the polls, hit up our friends at the Texas Civil Rights Project, and they got you covered. I know they helped us out when we were trying to fight for a polling location at the Texas State University campus back in 2018. So a wonderful team of lawyers who super passionate about what they do and voting rights, and they're great. Can't say enough good things about them. But,
okay,
yeah.
the next question is, can you get your voting rights suspended if you don't vote for a long time?
No, it's not one of those that what is it? Lose it if you don't use it kind of thing. No, your voting rights will not be suspended. What could happen is you might be held in suspense, which is what we talked about, where they're just going to impose like some extra barriers for you whenever it is you do try to go vote, like having to show extra ID. That's the most they can really do. But your voting rights won't be suspended. If anything, you'll just be held in, I guess, yeah, that's what you meant by being held in suspense. It could happen. I know for some people, whenever they don't vote in a major election, they might be held in suspense because, they're just not sure, I guess, if you're still an active voter, if you still live where you say you live and everything. But you shouldn't be barred from voting.
So it would probably be a good idea to check to make sure you're registered to vote before you want to go to the poll that day.
For sure.
Okay, the next question we have is, do we need to bring anything to the drive-through voter registration this weekend?
You wouldn't, yeah. Oh, I'll let Lakissa answer that one.
Okay. You don't have to bring anything, but you do have to know either your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security number. No one's going to verify it. You just have to know it and be able to put it on the form.
Any other questions, anybody?
I have a question. Hi, my name is Bianna Bright, and my question is, should I be comfortable with mail-in voting with everything that's going on with the post offices?
I know that in some counties, what they're doing is doing drop-off boxes where you can actually take your vote by mail ballot and just do a drop-off ballot. What I would do in those situations is just call your county elections department to see what your options are with the vote by mail situation. But honestly, yeah, it's one of those things where I know during this past runoff election, there was a lot of people that had, issues with being able to get their vote by mail ballot in there, well counted rather. So really, I would say, I'm not going to say that it's something you have to worry about, but definitely something that you should, be aware of, that there's, that's slow down with like the mail post office and everything. And that way, like if for whatever reason your mail-in doesn't make it in time for election day, if you're registered to vote in the county that you're trying to vote in, hopefully you can either do curbside voting, which also that's one of those things. Definitely call your county elections department to see if they offer curbside voting. And then that might be another alternative for you all, if that's something you want. Thank you so much for that question. Thank you so much for all these questions. These are all great questions.
I can think of one question, Fernanda, that you may have covered it at the beginning, but when everyone was putting on the Jamboard the different issues that they felt were important to them, how do we know how do we know when a candidate is the right candidate to vote for? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful question. Also, for those situations, I would definitely encourage you all to look up your sample ballots, but especially coming from nonpartisan organizations. The League of Women Voters has a wonderful voter guide where it's vote411.org. I'll type it here in the chat. They don't have the sample ballots out, but this is where you can pull up your sample ballot. And in that sample ballot, you can see the candidates and where they stand on the issues. Just very, like I said, nonpartisan, unbiased kind of resource for you all to see where candidates stand in the issues. Vote411.org. Great resource to be able to find out where your candidates stand on what issues. And if you want to look more into them, you get their names. You can do, really informed research just by looking up your sample ballot. Ballotpedia another great resource to be able to see how these representatives have voted in the past as well. Great questions.
Okay, so I have a question. Will we get the forms at the voter registration drive?
Yes, we will have the forms there for you. All you have to do is drive up and fill it out. We'll give you a receipt and we will get it turned in for you. You don't have to bring anything with you. And for you, Nyla, we'll also have your gift card there. So there's an extra perk for you coming.
Yay!
Awesome. Well, those are all the questions.
Yeah, we don't have any more unless anybody wants to jump in. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Perfect. We will hang out here for a couple of minutes to see if anybody has any questions. But we do want to thank Fernanda Maldonado from Move Texas for this extremely great presentation. Thank you, Fernanda, for taking your time to be here with us this evening. And with that, I think we are good to go. I did mention if you won a gift card, we will have those available for you at the drive-through on Saturday. If you're not going to be there or if you're out of the state, we will reach out to you and make sure that we can mail that to you and get it to you. All right, was there anything else, Vanessa?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and hopefully you all walk away a little bit more informed about the voting process and you're fired up to vote this November. So register, tell other people to register, and then take friends and family to the polls with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good evening.